Remember growing up making the perfect mixtape was an art? It would take hours or even days to get the mood just right. It's an art that's nearly been lost in today's drag and drop digital playlist world.
We're four friends of 35 years with many, many mixtapes between us. Join us each episode as we pick a theme, discuss the songs, and build an infinite mixtape. Welcome to the Mixtape Diaries.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are three today, Carla, Mark, and me, on hand today to do a pretty interesting kind of special one-off episode that we'll get to in a minute, but just happy to see your faces on my screen today in my squad cast.
Holy smokes, hi. Good to see you guys. Happy summer, I guess. It's almost fall. Well,
Brad and I actually got to see each other in person the other week, so that was a fun time.
Fun. I know, I was jealous.
Every time one of us, and this is not to fault you, Mark, but every time one of us mentions what time of the year it is, I wince because I think this episode's going to come out 8 months later.
We're recording for season 6, which will come out in 5 years from now. So,
right. So happy 2025, you all. Hope you had a great holiday season and happy New Year.
Well, we're doing our best, fans and listeners. It's summer can be hectic, and life has been a little bit hectic, both on the work and life side for all of us. But we're scratching and clawing. We're staying in there. We're trying to get these podcasts out or these episodes out, and we've got a lot of content coming at you here over the next couple months. It's been an interesting and fun spring and summer, right?
Absolutely.
It has been.
And this is our commitment to you. We are going to be flooding your inboxes.
We're going to be better. We're going to be better. I guess a couple of announcements before we dive into today's. I'm excited about today's episode. I think
too.
Brad and Carla are probably even more exciting. I think Carla fell off her chair when we discussed and landed on this theme. But before we get there, a couple announcements as we always like to do. You can find us, the Mixtape Diaries, at all your favorite podcast sites, whether that's Apple, Spotify, whatever other ones are out there. I don't know. Anyway, wherever you can listen to podcasts, you can find us, rate us, review us, only if it's good reviews. If they're bad reviews, we don't really care to hear about you because we just think we're great. So deal with it. We're so great, we only do one episode a year. So, and tell your friends. This is about the music. We love the music. We love to talk about music. We love to hear ourselves talk into microphones. So yeah, tell your friends, hopefully. And don't forget, there's an amazing playlist that accompanies these wonderful episodes. You can find those on Apple and Spotify as well. And last, but certainly not least, we are joining the modern era with a social media page, gang. Yes, you heard us. Gen X crew here has a social media page it's called Instagram. Do we call
We're
it Instagram
on the gram,
still?
yo.
Is it Gram? Is it IG? I don't know how the kids refer to this. I don't even think they use Instagram anymore. I think they're on like TikTok or X or whatever. Who knows?
If we're there, they've moved on.
Yeah,
probably.
pretty much. We finally have an Instagram page, and everybody's off to some other platform that I have no idea exists. But anyway, you can find us on Instagram at the Mixtape Diaries Podcast, and we're trying to keep that content going. It's fun. We'll reference our episodes. We're referencing anniversary album drops. We are referencing shows we're hitting as a collective group of podcasters. So check that out, like us, share us, have a good time with it. And I think with that, let's get into what we're going to talk about today.
Well, hold on one second. I do want to, special acknowledgement is due to Mark for taking up that project. And not just taking it up, but continuing it. He's doing an excellent job on that. Every 6 weeks when I log into Instagram, I'm thrilled to see all these new posts from that account, and so follow it, engage with it, and tip the cap to our good friend Mark Little for taking up that project.
Well, thank you. All that hard work has garnered us 42 followers.
Woo! We are crushing.
We're winning. And I think I know every single one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely you do.
Ooh, that reminds me. I have some concert footage to send you.
Ooh, yeah. Get it over. I was short of some content this week. It was kind of a slow week of anniversaries.
I forgot to send you the Boston shows.
Yeah. Okay. Well, note to self, your homework after this homework.
Moving on.
So what are we going to get into today, Yal?
So I think this is kind of another one of Mark's babies here.
It is.
This was
his
idea. The background for this, we're going to talk about Kraftwerk.
What?
We're talking about
Kraftwerk. We're talking about Krautrock on the mixtape.
I still can't believe it. Am I in a fever dream?
Yes.
Or is this actually happening?
Am I in a fever dream, or is Brad wearing a lime green Kraftwerk t-shirt? And Mark's not objecting. Yeah. So the root cause of this is that Kraftwerk played a bunch of shows down Mark's way in SoCal, if that's what the kids call it, right? And it was like a 9-show stand where they were playing an album every night, starting with their Autobahn record in 1974. And I decided I got to go out and see Kraftwerk and incidentally see Mark. Actually, I was there to see Mark and incidentally saw Kraftwerk. But we got tickets, went to 2 shows. I was excited just at the prospect of sharing a live Kraftwerk show with Mark and Liz because, of course, they hadn't seen it before. And I won't say it becomes old hat when you've seen it because it never does, right? But it's also especially cool to take your friends there if they haven't seen it before and say, just take it all in, man. So we did that. It was the Walt Disney Theater. Is that what it's called, Mark?
Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles in DTLA.
Yeah. We saw the first 2 shows they played, and they played the entire Autobahn album in the first one and the entire Radio-Activity one, the second one. So I don't know if we can claim Mark and Liz as converts to Krautrock generally or even to Kraftwerk, but at least we've got enough here to engage and talk and get Mark's read on the situation. So,
well, I'd have to give shout out and kudos to Liz because it was her idea because this also coincided with her birthday. And I was like, "What do you want?"
Very generous.
Yeah, I was like, "What do you want to do What do you want to do for your birthday? You want to go see music with Brad and Mark? Because that sounds like something you'd want to do on your birthday." And she's like, "Yeah, I actually do." And so, not so much of a convert for Liz. She's kind of always been in the bucket here more so than I am. But I would say that both of us respect, and I would say of all the Krautrock, Kraftwerk is the one group in that mix that I can consistently listen to, no problem. So this wasn't as easy an arm twist to come on here today and talk to you and Carla about, nor was it as difficult an arm twist to go see. It's when you get into the more obscure stuff that I get challenged more. But yeah, excited to talk about this with you. Excited for you to dive deep into my brain of what I saw. But it was pretty incredible. For the listeners that don't know, the Walt Disney Concert Hall has maybe some of the most incredible sound setup that you will ever find for high audio, and it certainly came out in a big way when we were there. And it's a small venue overall. So
yeah, I was going to ask, what's the capacity there?
I'll have to Google that for the max.
Sorry.
I should. You can't ask questions we don't know the answers to.
Didn't know.
Jesus, Carla, that
I had to provide my questions in advance.
That wasn't in the green room briefing.
I'll just do a quick.
So I'll fill in the meantime by saying, yeah, it sounded great, and it's a great match for Kraftwerk because I think they're very particular about how they sound. The sound was so clean, so precise, filled that space right from the very jump, right? When they come out with the vocoders and they are like, right, ladies and gentlemen, this evening, the man machine.
Machine.
Right? And of course that's in German, right? Which has this like really, it just kind of thunders and shakes your ears. It's very cool. I love every bit of it, of course. And I was excited to see these albums, right? Because there's a lot of tracks. I mean, they play the hits whenever I've seen them, and this was an opportunity to see them kind of digging deep in their catalog and playing some stuff that I've got parked right here on record. Won't miss an opportunity for cross promotion here. So Carla and Brad Talk about Krautrock did a Kraftwerk episode probably a couple of years ago now.
Yeah,
it was fairly early, right?
Mm-hmm. It was.
When it came, it was overdue, right? Because these guys are super important. Right? They invented electronic rock, as far as I'm concerned. They invented synth pop for sure. Hugely influential on hip hop.
Yep.
If you want to hear more about their history, because we're not going to do that here, check out that episode. It's the Kraftwerk Autobahn episode. So we focused specifically on the Autobahn album, but talked a lot about sort of where they came from, what they were about, how they got up to it. So here, I think we're just going to talk about what we saw, what we liked, right, how we feel about it, and offer 3 songs, one apiece, and go from there.
And sadly, Carla wasn't able to make it up for this, although she was invited. So just so all the listeners know, we weren't mad at Carla. We did want her to come. She had a conflict. But she has also seen Kraftwerk, so she'll be inputting from a separate lens, not specific to the LA show, but from a separate show. And it'll be exciting to compare and contrast notes of what we all saw when we got to see them. But moral of the story being here is all 3 of us here today. We're missing hey, shout out Noel, we miss ya, but we're missing Meister today. He's on summer break still, but all 3 of us here have had an opportunity to see them live, so it'll be fun to share notes. And quickly, just to circle back on that capacity question, Carla, the Walt Disney Concert Hall is a hardwood-paneled main auditorium that has seating capacity of 2,265, and it is in a vineyard-style configurations with seats surrounding the stage. So there's a little recap of where we were listening to.
So is it in the round, or is like a regular theater?
It's regular theater. Call it horseshoey. It does wrap around the stage a little bit. Night 1 for us, we kind of had a center stage look. So we were a little further back, but straight on. And then night 2, we were flanked to the left, but very close. So it was 2 very different perspectives, but sound was equally kick-ass in either location. And the crowd was a little more energetic, I would say, on night 2. Wouldn't you say, Brad? People were like really into it. People actually got up and they were like doing their dance things. It wasn't like a GA, right? So you couldn't really get around and dance, but people were getting up in aisleways and doing it. So,
sorry, I appreciate you filibustering. Someone decided to print like a Tolstoy novel on the printer in this room. So that's what the is going to be for the next, 46 minutes. Let's put it on both sides of the page because that makes it twice as long.
Oh, I thought you were just trying to get your own electronic sounds inspired by Krautrock. So,
I mean, that's it. Yeah, that's actually not bad. Yeah,
Brad's working on his sound effects.
It was interesting because I think probably there was just a little more action for the Radio-Activity album, which, I mean, it's not the jumpiest little number, right? No. But people, I don't know, you get different crowds on different nights, I think. But it's probably worth saying a word just about how they present, right? Which is that you've got 4 desks. They're basically desks. And if you sit high enough, which we did on the second night, you can almost start to see what they've got on those desks, but just barely, right? But they walk out in these kind of unitards, right? They're like wetsuits, I think is a fair way to describe them, like rubbery suits that have LEDs on them that flash sort of in time with the music, and they're sitting at their desk, kind of moving their hands. They're not like striking poses. They're not rocking out in any meaningful way. It's very stiff by design. They have the man machine, right? So, or the men machines, I guess is another way to put it. And so they're very kind of stolid. They're German. It's about economy of movement, but of course they're generating all this amazing sound, and behind them is usually a screen displaying all kinds of. They didn't go 3D, Carla.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, were the graphics the same or similar as the 3? So when I saw them 2 years ago in Nashville here with the Ryman, and it was the 3D. That was when they were doing the 3D tour.
Yeah, I had only seen them in 3D, and I thought that was kind of all they were doing anymore. But it was the Autobahn was the same kind of computer animated. Right?
Yeah,
just the Volkswagen and the Benz going down the pike. It was just 2D is all, and and they had the same video for the model, right, with all the black and white cut footage from the women in their gowns in the 50s and 60s. So. all that was, I didn't see anything noticeably different except when they did new songs, right?
Yeah.
And so they had something ginned up for every song, which I can imagine would have taken a lot of work. This was maybe the third or fourth time they've done this. They did it in New York in 2011, right? This kind of retrospective where they did all the shows. They did it again in 2013. And
was that the one in London? Like they did it at the Tate Modern. The Tate, yeah. That would have been cool. Yeah.
And I was, when we were doing our episode, I was reading about that and thinking, man, that would have been cool to see. And so when these shows came up, I wasn't going to miss them. And I felt a little twinge of guilt because I was like, Mark, do you want to go with me? And I wasn't sure he would. And then I felt a big twinge of guilt when he said it was Liz's birthday. So, but she was up for it, or at least put on a good face. So, so I hope you guys had a good time and kind of appreciated where it all comes from, because it's something to see, right? I mean, whether you're going to go home and like rock out to this for the next 3 or 4 weeks and buy all the albums is another thing, but it is absolutely something to see and experience.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing actually, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if this was just going to be boring as hell and no different than listening to electronic music at home, or how it was going to present itself. And despite giving Brad and Carla a lot of grief for Krautrock, I do, like I said earlier, really admire Kraftwerk and their influence on music, and what is incredible is just the span of genres that they've inspired. And I think probably the most just phenomenal thing as you're sitting there listening to them play this live in front of you is like every song you're just like, oh, this sounds like OMD, this sounds like Depeche Mode, this sounds like Daft Punk, this sounds like 808 State, and then right. And then you get into the whole hip hop influence of it, which is just bonkers. And I think finally we pissed off the lady next to us because I kept like whispering over to Liz and saying,
it a lot. Yeah.
I think Grimes took this song, this riff from her thing, and the lady's like, shh. It's like I was in a library or something. She was probably German, Right. But anyway, it was just I think outside of just listening to these guys in their 70s stand up there for an hour and a half, right? At least close to. And almost 2 hours. Like it was 8 to 10 o'clock. So 2 hours, no breaks. They're standing up there in their 70s, like ripping through albums. I think that the journey and knowing enough about, music on this cast to be dangerous, I guess, like just being able to connect the influences of what they've done. And then the only other thing I'll say, and Carla, I'll pass to you, just get your perspective, but just like remembering that this stuff was being done in the 70s, and it sounds as relevant or more relevant than most of the music being made today, and they were doing this in the effing 70s. Like, it was like, what? So that was pretty amazing.
That's the amazing part. When I saw this show with Pink Floyd Glenn here. We call my friend Glenn Pink Floyd Glenn on the Krautrock podcast. Saw it here in Boston and at the Wang Theater. And at one point when they played Autobahn, I leaned in on just for context, right? This is 1974. Not even like the 78, right? Like they did Autobahn in 1974 with Mini Moogs. Of course they were still using the flutes back then too, although Ralph did not break out the flutes, Carl.
I know. I really wish he would.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was
that was Florian's thing,
right?
though.
So, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I think it is worth noting that Ralph is the only original member of this iteration of Kraftwerk.
Right. And they were recording as early as 1971.
I think so.
Was when Kraftwerk self-titled came out. There were 3 records that came before Autobahn where they were doing a lot of different and weirder stuff. It probably qualifies more as Krautrock, as we
as we would call it.
Practice it.
There's more guitar. There was guitars.
Yeah. But they don't release those. They don't reissue those. It's almost as though they've deprecated them, and they certainly weren't playing any of those tracks at any of these shows. So, as far as Ralph is concerned, this thing started in Autobahn. But even then, right, that was 48 years ago, 49 years ago. So, yeah, wild. And the other guys, it's not as though he recruited 20-year-olds to.
Yeah, no, they're older.
They're all graybeards. Yeah, I think about how I'm not even able to stand for the duration of a concert, and here they are, like 78 years old.
Yeah, they did 9 nights back to back.
Yeah,
I think one of the guys dropped on night 9 or night 8. I think they were down to 3.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. But we had the full 4 of them for our 2 nights. Yeah, that was pretty great.
Well, I was glad, Mark, that you and Liz decided to go because, I mean, you said it. It isn't until you sit and you listen to these songs that you realize how influential they've been to modern music. And it is wild, like we've said, that all this stuff came out in the 70s and it still sounds fresh, and some of it sounds a little out of time, like you couldn't really place it in a certain year. Some of it is very, like, kind of 80s sound. Some of it you can kind of date, but still, when you think about who they've influenced, it's crazy. They've influenced basically every genre of music that exists in the world.
No. And they did it with, I mean, the equipment they had then is not the equipment.
No, it was so rudimentary. So to think that they were making these sounds with things that were, I mean, barely functional. So
one of the things that they did, Mark, is they liked the sound of the drum machine, but they didn't want the drum machine to play it. So they had one of their guys, they rigged up these metal sticks with wires out the back. I think we talked about this at the concert, right? So that, and then they had these metal plates that would, when the stick touched them, it would complete a circuit and it would activate the sound from the drum machine. So they were playing the drums with these metal sticks, hitting pads, right? Kind of like electronic drums, right? That we had in the 80s, and that my brother-in-law even has now and plays to keep it quiet around the house for Tia. They had humans playing drum machines, and they were rigging it up themselves, right? Pretty cool.
I just imagine, like, are they like kids in a candy shop now with all the new technology, or are they kind of like, no, we don't like it, we like the old school way of producing music still? I'd be really curious to kind of hear if, like, technology, which they were pushing and really pioneering at the time, now that it's gone so far, like if I think of, our friend Rieger, and I look at what the hell he's doing with his sound room and the sounds and beautiful music he's creating, like, are those Kraftwerk guys like digging modern day, or are they just still like, F this, I like the sound of the drum machine, but I'm not using it, I'm going to deconstruct the drum machine to get the sound, but play it the way I would have in the 70s. It's just, that's bonkers. But
I think it's probably a combo. Like because with the research that Brad and I do for a lot of the Krautrock episodes, you kind of, some of these guys are still with us. So when they get interviewed, I think they like the fact that it's easier in some regard, but I think it's a mix, right? Some things they just can't quite get the sound the way that they could get it when they just sort of hodgepodged it together. But also there are things that are just a lot easier to do now and faster. And I think these are guys that are, at the forefront of technology, right? Like even like a Brian Eno, when you see what he's doing, and he worked with a lot of these Krautrock guys at one point or another. I mean, he's still doing, really cool stuff using new technology. So I think it's probably a mix.
But I think it's not out of bounds to say they kind of defined the sound of the 80s in a way, right? Like that
definitely
synth pop that we hear, they largely invented, right? So I'm going to talk about OMD because I can't talk about Kraftwerk and not talk about OMD, so I'll do that when my song comes up. But OMD was cribbing off of Kraftwerk, and then, right, Vince Clarke, it's like, I want to have a synth pop band like OMD, and so you can see like the whole family tree of it with them at the root. And they all, right, they varied it to significant degrees, right? Kraftwerk is very like mechanistic. The vocals aren't very impassioned. They're very flat and
they're meant to be robotic.
Yeah, exactly. Often it is even just vocoders, right? So they kind of kept to their niche at the same time that everyone else was springboarding off of this and landing top 40 hits. And every once in a while, maybe they'd even get paid for it, right? Like they did for Planet Rock. Right. So, yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. We should also just include the visual component of their live show, which was pretty incredible too. And I know that was one of Liz's favorite things is like, you know, we all were blessed last year or earlier this year to be able to go see U2 at the Sphere, which was a whole visual thing in amongst itself, but to have all of this Kraftwerk music going and then kind of the storytelling visually that they had going behind it was pretty incredible, including the visuals of their robots. They're not robot suits, but they're light up unitard suits. Like that, you know, everything was like electronic and emphasized and made the storytelling of the music more dramatic. So from, you know, 30s style mannequin versions of themselves to floating heads with talking lipstick lips to Autobahn to Trans-Europe Express cruising through the night. Like it was pretty incredible visuals to take in while all this music was going.
Yeah, it sure is fun. It really is
Did
fun.
they have the robots? Like, did they bring the robots out?
They didn't bring the robots out.
Bummer.
So Mark, what they've done in the other shows that we've seen is they actually have the animatronic mannequin versions of themselves, and when they play the robots, it's just the robots out there. Like they leave the stage and the robots are there. Yeah, they showed all of those, right? The robots video has all of those images in them, but they didn't have the actual robots. So alas.
That's a cool element. They did that at the show here at the 3D show.
Oh, that's cool. Next time, maybe.
I think it also just gives them a little break for
For they might have needed it.
And I love that you said next time, Mark.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if you picked that up.
I was listening for that.
Should we talk about a couple songs here before we wrap it up? Yeah. No, this is fun. Carla, you want to kick us off with the?
Well, why don't I go last because I wasn't at this show, and I'll pick one of mine.
Yeah.
All right. So I find it interesting that you and Brad pick songs from the actual albums that Brad and I saw with Liz, and then Liz and I actually pick songs that were featured the two nights. So for the listeners, they did cover the majority of the two albums we went to see them on, but they also mixed in some other hits from or songs from it. So we saw the albums Autobahn and Radio-Activity. And then we're actually going to sprinkle in The Man Machine and something from Technopop into this conversation today. But Brad, why don't you kick us off with a Radio-Activity song?
Sure. Yeah, so I was super excited to see the Radio-Activity show. That's the album after Autobahn. It was 1975, so they had a really big radio hit with Autobahn. Not the full 20-minute version that they played at the show. But they had a radio edit down to 3 minutes, and so that kind of put them on the map, right? So that when they were touring in the United States, they were actually touring on Radio-Activity and Autobahn at the same time, right? So I just really love this record top to bottom. It's a really interesting record because it's not just songs, but it mixes in just little thematic clips of about a minute long, right? It starts, for example, with a song called Geiger Counter, right? Which is just the sounds of, or mimicking the sounds of a Geiger counter clicking as it's approaching radioactivity. And then the song that I picked was Radioactivity, which is that song that it goes right into.
Radioactivity is in the air for you and me. Radioactivity discovered by my Madame Curie.
Just a quick further note about that album, right? This is the record that sounds the most to me like OMD.
For sure.
And it's on the record that when you go online and look, Andy McCluskey from OMD is always calling out as a massive influence on its work.
And you hear it. Hook, line, and sinker the entire time.
Yeah. So, and it's even the case that when Kraftwerk did their album-by-album show at the Tate Modern, we talked about it, 2013, Radio-Activity was the show that McCluskey had to go to and did, and talks about it online. So, interestingly, so Radio-Activity, I think it's the big name kind of signature track on this record, but it's not, strictly speaking, the title track, because the album is spelled Radio-Activity with a hyphen between radio and activity. And it has all of these themes about radio in it, right? There are these songs called Airwaves, Antenna, Transistor, right? About radio. Whereas Radioactivity, the song is about radioactivity, right? It's about nuclear power. They sing about Madame Curie on this. It's kind of upbeat. It's sort of like, hey, we're excited to have radioactivity in the air. Like we're going to generate power. And if you think 1975, when this came out, we were a lot more forward-looking and positive about nuclear power than when we might be today. So if you listen to the album version, which we're going to have on the playlist, right, that's what you're going to hear. Radioactivity is in the air for you and me, right? It's all doing us favors. There are these Morse code sequences in this, right, that you hear like kind of over and over again. And if you're paying close enough attention, you realize that they're repeating. It's not just like one long stream of random Morse code. So I went online to see what it was spelling out, right? It's people sort of tapping out, right, the dots and dashes. And it's spelling out the chorus. Radioactivity is in the air for you and me. So trivia note, for those of you who go way back, this is the second song I've picked with a Morse code sequence in it. The first one was Planet Claire, right? It has that radio stuff at the opening. This is one that Kraftwerk itself put together, right? They didn't just pull this from existing audio. They made their own. So last note on that radio signal, I love that they don't just play it. They play it and then they start distorting it and making it sound kind of real weird and corroded and decaying. And they do it kind of at a part in the song structure where any other band in 75 would have been doing a guitar solo. So I just love the prospect of Kraftwerk saying, yeah, we don't do guitar solos. We beat the hell out of Morse code, right? Like in between the second chorus and the third verse or whatever it is. So you can hear at the beginning of this kind of haunted, and it plays throughout, this kind of haunted choral track, like it's like disembodied human voices. That's the real OMD sound that jumps right out at me. Just love this track. Interesting too at the show, right? It being 2024, they have an altogether different perspective now, I think, on radioactivity and whether it's good for it to be in the air. And so when they play the show, they're flashing big 8-bit text behind them, right? Chernobyl, Sellafield, Fukushima, and then they'll speak those place names through the vocoders in that very ominous way. You could say that they've changed their tune, right? Literally. So anyway, that was my pick. I didn't know if that was what you were going to pick, Carla. Is that what you were getting at in the text?
That's why that's why I said I need to wait and see what Brad picks.
Yeah.
Radioactivity is my favorite Kraftwerk album.
Oh, I would never have guessed that. I thought you liked Man Machine.
I do like Man Machine because it's like synth pop basically and fun and like dancey, like dance music, but of like Radioactivity is like Carla. The one. Yeah. Like I really love that record.
Yeah. So that's a shirt I bought. I will say that that Mark and Liz were strongly advising me not to get the radioactive lime green Kraftwerk shirt and to get something a little more tasteful. But I had to do it, and I'm wearing it today.
I love it.
It's less about taste and more about what works for your palate. And it's just not really in your palate, Brad. But you know what?
Yeah, okay. It was more about the quality of the cotton being used.
And the quality of the cotton wasn't great. Although I do have to hand it to the Kraftwerk guys. Like, it wasn't as bad a quality as I've seen at a lot of shows lately. So kudos. I don't know if they're just getting good German organic cotton in their stuff or what. But and message, sidebar, to all of you concert promoters and bands out there. Come on, man. Are we really trying to squeeze out that much margin that we can't get something that's not a see-through piece of shit t-shirt? Like, there's a reason there's a whole side market going on with higher quality t-shirts of your graphics because you're making shit t-shirts. Come on. Let's do this.
I like an homage t-shirt. I like the feel of that. I like the cut of it. I finally figured out what size fits me. If they could work with homage.
Yeah,
those are nice soft t-shirts.
Little plug for the Columbus, Ohio-based apparel maker, Homage. I find their cotton a little bit drapey, but it's I'm body conscious. What can I say?
You're going to have higher standards.
I like a good classic dry, mid to heavyweight organic cotton. What can I say? I'm biased.
I'm sorry that I led us down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's get us back on
my comment.
Let's get us back on track. I love the Radioactivity album as well. I love the song pick, Brad, and the only thing I'd add is, like, I just read, like, this was probably one of their most pop friendly albums, which is probably why ultimately OMD was so inspired by it and why it's like such an easy listen for most people, right? Like, again, I'll try and tie the thread through why Kraftwerk's enjoyable to me versus, like, when we get into some of the more extreme krautrock that gets a little bit avant-garde and obscure and maybe a little just too edgy in my older age. But, like, I feel like every one of these albums that Kraftwerk has, especially Radioactivity, is really easy to listen to, and it's probably since it is pop friendly and really pop friendly kind of 80s synth, it's just easy. It's an easy transition or bridge, down to this world. So
absolutely,
yeah, good pick.
So what was yours?
Oh, so funny enough for me, I did not land in the world of the two albums we saw, although Autobahn is just such a classic, and the visuals for it were so good. And I teetered on, do I go that obvious? And funny story, before the first night of the Autobahn show, so it was opening night, we were trying to drive around the streets figuring out the parking situation, and we had Autobahn playing in the car, prepping, concert prep.
We did.
So we're cranking Autobahn while I'm driving my Volkswagen, and I had to whip an illegal U-turn, and Liz was in the back seat actually talking to Carla, I believe, or texting you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she was actually talking to you, and she took a picture of Brad and I doing an illegal U-turn. And later on, when we looked more closely at the video, there you can hear Autobahn playing. You have Brad and I's back of our heads there, and then if you look through the windshield, there is a Volkswagen Beetle parked in the view. It was you couldn't make this
it was
shit
so
up.
Perfect.
It was perfect.
It's like recreating the album cover.
Yeah. And we had no idea then we were going to see the visuals of a Volkswagen Bug driving around playing Autobahn. So I feel like that should just be my pick, and we should move on, right? Because I've spent so much time setting it up. But we weren't even at the show yet, and this is what was happening around Kraftwerk. So it was totally meant to be. But I ended up picking a song off their 1978 release, which is The Man Machine. This, I feel like, is probably a lot of synthesizer heavy melodies as well. And I think what's surprising to me is how much disco informed this album is. And my hatred for disco, but you can produce disco in a way that I guess I can tolerate. And this is the way I did it. I picked the Man Machine track off of the Man Machine album, and I think for me it just sounded so freaking good in this concert hall. It was it, and I think that's it. Just to be honest, going into this show, I may have heard the song once or twice, maybe, but coming out of the show 2 nights. First night when we were kind of recapping what our favorite song was, I'm like, I think it was the Man Machine, but I'll tell you tomorrow night if they play it again. And sure enough, it just solidified it. The crispness of it, the links to Depeche Mode to me, and specifically Depeche Mode's Black Celebration album, is probably why I quickly just caught, latched on to this song in that evening. But it's as simple as that. I won't over speak or be too long winded about it, but it just was amazing. I was astonished how much Depeche Mode definitely had to be influenced by not only this album, but this song. But I was also just surprised that, after kind of studying it a little more post-show, how much disco informed it was. And I feel like I'm eating crow over here because I hate disco, but here's a disco informed synth album that I'm saying I love. So who knew? I guess, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
I mean, there's a lot of very poorly produced disco. So, I mean, your hatred of disco is not unwarranted. I mean, there's a lot of bad disco. So, but this does it right. This is a synth pop disco that whole album is so good from start to finish. It's the first album I bought of theirs on vinyl, was that record.
Well, and it speaks to also that they weren't just sitting in their studio, right? Kling Klang Studios, just in a void.
Yeah.
Right? They were listening to what was out there and reacting to it, incorporating it as well. So they weren't content just, being influential. I think they wanted to be influenced.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we got a vocoder track on here too, because,
Yep.
That's super important when you're talking about Kraftwerk, is to get at least one song where they're vocodering it up, and they absolutely do it here.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well done, sir.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if I was going to pick a record for you, Mark, I would have probably picked this one, Man Machine.
Yeah, I hadn't given it much timing. Obviously, I went to the obvious first 2, Autobahn and Radio-Activity, which is a bit of the reason we probably picked those 2 nights too, because they were the actual 2 albums that, one, Brad really wanted to see Radio-Activity. It worked out calendar-wise, and then 2, I think they're at least for me, they were the ones I knew. The library has since opened up fully.
Yeah, I mean, and they really, I'm looking at your set list from those nights, those, they played the hits, right? Computer World, the model's also on Man Machine. Those are all
Space Lab.
Yeah, I mean, they're all great tracks. They're all super dancey. I like how they place those in the set list too, so that's kind of riles up the crowd and kind of makes for a fun atmosphere before kind of diving into the actual meat of the album that they were covering that day. Yeah.
And when I last saw them in Boston, they played the whole Man Machine album. They played all.
They did when I.
Is it 6 tracks?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. They did at the show that I saw too in 22.
So that's kind of that's become maybe their meat and potatoes, right? Their wheelhouse. Yeah, you can't complain.
Yeah, I mean, those are the songs when they played them at the Ryman that everybody stood up and was dancing in the, the Ryman is church pews. It's not actual physical seats. You're sitting in church pews. So it was just everyone was on their feet. It was really fun.
The Church of Synth.
Yeah, definitely was the Church of Synth that night.
And they are the prophets, for sure.
For sure. So what was your favorite when you saw them, Carla? Shifting gears here.
Well, I saw the same show that Brad had seen back in 22, and I got to be honest, I actually picked a song that you guys saw live when you saw the Autobahn night. I picked Comet and Melody 2. don't know if they played that. I didn't go back and look at the set list that I saw. I can do that while we're still talking, but
Yeah.
I love Commit. I felt like we had to have an Autobahn song on here because you guys saw the Autobahn album. So, and I love Commit and Melody too. And anytime I can pick that song for something, it seems that's the one I pick.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
So when Brad picked
it's
Radio-Activity, I was like, okay, well then I'm going Commit and Melody too.
And now cemented on the playlist for life.
So
right.
that one's one of my favorites because I think it kind of has everything that, minus the vocoders, that encapsulates Kraftwerk, right? You have some like weird ambient noises happening, and then it kind of unfolds into this like lush melody that kind of rolls through. That sounds very OMD to me, you know, and that kind of
100%.
like era of synth pop. And it's a fast track. It's like not a 20-minute long song. It's a few minutes, and it kind of comes in, comes out. It ends side one on that album, and it is a nice closer to that side.
I was so excited for them to play that, Carla. And when they played it, it was kind of a letdown.
Oh, bummer.
Like when they played it live, it surprised me because I thought it was just going to swarm over me the way it sounds. It seemed like they were kind of rushing through the non-Autobahn tracks from Autobahn a little bit.
Oh.
But in any case, it is one of my favorites. It arguably is sort of maybe them becoming Kraftwerk, right? Because that's the album where they were transitioning out of that real krautrocky sound to what they are now. And Autobahn was its whole big own 20-minute long experimental thing. Mm-hmm. And this is like, hey, we can do a bite-sized, right, 3.5-minute track or however long, 4-minute track. And it's poppy, it's perfect, it's glimmering, it's beautiful. Yeah, oh, God, I love it to death.
I mean, that whole album is the most familiar album I have. So, good pick, Carla. It was, again, that song was great.
Yeah, I love that. They didn't play it when I saw them in 22. I just pulled the set list, and they didn't play that one, but it's one of my favorites. I also like, what's the last track on Autobahn? Morgan Spatzer Gang.
Oh,
I almost picked that one because I like that song a lot too.
With the, it's the flutes,
yes,
like recapping the theme of Autobahn.
Yeah.
And
it's very
like you got out of your car. Yeah.
That's also what I like about Autobahn is there's throughout the whole album there's just this forward motion that goes obviously in Autobahn, but then it also just carries through in all the other tracks. And then sometimes you've stopped and you're by a meadow in the water. You know, it's like it like carries through all these little themes, and it's cool to listen to it from front to back to really get an appreciation of what they were doing thematically.
And they're synthesizing like twittering birds and buzzing flies. It's sort of like you stepped out of your car and you're walking through the woods and you can hear all the animals except it's synthesizers.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's yeah. Love it.
We had an honorable mention from Liz who couldn't join us today.
We were hoping to sneak Liz onto the podcast as a guest, but she couldn't make it. And she wanted us to include her favorite song of the night, which was Music Nonstop. Music Nonstop. She loved the song, and I think she was just fascinated by the floating heads with lipstick and the visuals of that, which is also the album cover. And kind of hard to figure. So whether or not we call this Electric Cafe or we call it techno pop, it kind of goes back and forth. I believe it was launched as Electric Cafe in 1986, but then got remastered and changed to techno pop. I read something about there was a delay in the recording of it because I think it was Carl had a cycling accident, or no, Ralph suffered a cycling accident or something. So they started recording this album in 82. But anyway, Liz loved this song, and she's like, please include it on your playlist, and please just give it a little bit of an honorable mention, which...
Yeah, no complaints.
I had never heard this song until the show. So, well, I think, again, for Liz and I, we were discovering this group song by song, and it opened up their catalog from like what was Autobahn and Radio-Activity really only here in the household to now the full spectrum of it. And the paraphernalia or merch side of Kraftwerk had a table of, and it had like a 10-pack of pins or something, like, little pins you could
all the
put.
record covers.
So Brad and I went in on it, and we kind of did a round robin choosing pins like we were 10 years old on the coffee table. Brad got to pick first, and Liz took the forehead, the album Electric Cafe, which she wears on her left chest lapel nonstop.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Anyway, shout out, Liz. Here's this one's for you. So,
Mark, did you ever listen to the band Electronic?
oh yeah,
So you know that Karl Bartos from Kraftwerk was in Electronic.
no,
There you go.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that. Really?
For a little
Never
while he
know.
was.
With Barney and Johnny Marr
and Neil Tennant.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
I did not know that.
So you were... It's kind of like why some of their songs do sound like they could be Kraftwerk songs.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna have to go listen to Electronic today.
That's very cool.
To kind of put those
No,
together.
So I like this ad. I like that. Right, it's kind of late career stuff. It shows them evolving, right, as we go deeper into the '80s. Maybe a little less ambient, a little more kind of beaty.
Yeah, it's like much more of a dance track.
Yeah. And they were they were huge, obviously, like in the hip hop underground, but as like the Detroit house. I know so little about techno, but like the Detroit house scene caught on, right? It was all about Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
And they were kind of getting folded into that. One of the songs that they play, they flash like Detroit, Berlin, or like Detroit, Dusseldorf, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why Detroit? And I had to like go look it up and read about it, right? And this isn't going to make any sense to you at all, Mark, but like I was reading about them and hearing about how hugely influential the Stooges and the MC5 were on them. So like it was like Detroit influenced them and they influenced Detroit. Although I really struggle to hear any MC5 in what they're doing.
Yeah, that's true.
But you read about it like all the time. Like this book I got from the library about Kraftwerk that I still haven't returned from when we did our episode, Carla.
Whoops.
Yeesh.
They know where to find you.
Yeah.
You're going to be like that Seinfeld episode.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Anyway, they're going to come and take my house for closing.
Yeah. Well, awesome.
Well, I am so glad to have been able to come out, first of all, and just spend a week with you and get an insight into your life in California and just everything that's great about it and everything that's great about Mark and Liz Little, and then be able to go to those shows and have you come out of it not like rubbing your head like, oh God, it's over. Thank God for the release.
Yeah, because that could have happened.
It could have happened. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great few days, highlighted by obviously going to a couple Krautrock shops, but we ate a lot of good food. We got some vinyl shopping in and around town, and showed Brad a little bit of Southern California, from Venice Beach craziness to farm to table. So we had a great few days, and then watched him navigate painful work stuff too, which we were all going through. But it was great. It was a great few days, and Carla knows these days well, as we've had the blessings to see a bunch of music together. The three of us plus an extended group here over the past 6 months, and I think it just really stresses how much we took for granted prior to COVID live music, and we're certainly doing our best to make up for that and then some. Getting a part-time job down at the local wine shop to compensate for some of this, but hey, as the old saying goes, carpe diem, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
Well, I love talking a little Kraftwerk on our non-Krautrock podcast. This has been a real treat today.
Yeah.
I never thought we'd see this day. I don't know if we can
open the door.
I didn't either. I never thought we'd say this day.
Open the door any wider. It might just be Kraftwerk.
I don't want to fly too close to the sun with this. Let's just leave it be.
But I'll tell you what, I'm happy. I'm happy with it.
I'll give you a little noi, but that's probably about as far as I'll go. So
yeah.
All right, that's fair.
Boom.
Well, how do they say goodbye in German? Shushi?
Tschüss.
Tschüss? Tschüssi? Tschüss?
Oh my God, what is happening?
Was ist das?
Like that, yeah.
Was ist das? Tschüss. How about just ciao ciao?
Or Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Oh, yeah. I think I was trying to go more slang here with my German slang. Tschüss. Anyway, thought it was more casual. Auf Wiedersehen.
Right. You're going to have to wipe down that mic now.
Yeah. Until next time.
And with that, over and aus. Über und aus.
Wir fahren